Yeah, and like I said, right now the guy's playing at a high level, and we've all been waiting on it.
Yes.
All been and in my mind, as a quarterback, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it, right? But you're going to have games where, and Yogi, you could probably expand on it. You're going to have games where, hey, bro, we know it's going to be me and him today. One of us is going to win this game.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to come down to that. And I think, the Washington game kind of set him apart because
Yes.
we all knew what Washington had, right?
Penix.
He's an exceptional player. He's been hurt every year. He's got unbelievable arm talent. And, but to win that game the way in the fashion that UCLA won it, and to keep going and everybody saying, well, we'll see next week. Well, we'll see next week. Guess what? We're getting to be week 6, 7 now, and he's still playing like that. And I'm with you. I mean, he's playing as well as any quarterback there is in the country right now.
Okay, so let's flip it because their defense is the most improved part of that team.
Yeah,
and they're going to play another guy in Bo Nix, who I've had a couple of Bo's games, had their most recent one against Arizona. Mm-hmm. And Bo's told me this many times, and I think it's reflective in his play, that he's playing with the most confidence he's ever had in his life. And he's playing really free. And I credit Dan Lanning and Kenny Dillingham for coaching him and talk to him that way. Like, Coach, you coach in the South. Like,
yeah.
Bo would say, like, sometimes you feel like you wear everything. And right. I think that your head coach has the ability to alleviate some of that. I think Lanning and Dillingham have done a phenomenal job there. And he's playing his best football. We've got, like, legit Heisman candidate duel to your exact point.
Well, the other part is, when you come through like that, like Bo, and since he was in junior high school,
yeah,
so much pressure on him. And let's be honest, he went as far away from home as he could go without leaving the country. Get away from that, right? So he's in a good spot for himself, and he's got a smile on his face. He's playing free, and there's been no question about his talent. I mean, he's really talented. So, it's good for him. And the transfer portal, it's like we talked about last week, like, all these guys that have shown up at all these other places that may have not had success at the last place. And the coaches have done a great job, just like with Bo, but they show up in a new place with new life and a new breath, and they're playing lights out. I mean, just lights out. And they're difference makers all over the country right now. We can name 6, 7 of those guys right now who, well, what happened to so-and-so? And then they look up and like, that's where he is. And he's going up and down the field, right? But it's just completely different look, smiling on the sideline, slapping people on the back, right? Hugging folks. They're like, he's been waiting for this all his life just to play free. And I think Bo fits right into that category right now.
I think playing free is the key. Being so close to home, everybody's watched you the whole time, and getting away, as you mentioned, as far away as he could be. I mean, like, what he could have gone to Corvallis, I'm sure, but like, he's pretty much as far away as he could be.
If Hawaii had called him, he might have gone there.
Exactly, yeah. But it's one of those things where he looks more comfortable, right? Yeah. He looks comfortable. And Yogi, you called a couple of his games already. Like, he's settled in. And the first game was a disaster. That first game was a disaster for that entire football team. And then they started to figure out everything. And they're figuring it out, and they're becoming a little tougher because they're getting some of that Dan Lanning kind of injected into them.
Yep.
So they're getting tougher, and they're figuring it out, and they're fighting, and they work hard. And that's I don't know. I was doing a show earlier today, and I think that the hardest thing in football, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we've all been in this game for a long time. We've all been in this sport, played this sport, worked in this sport for a long time. But I think the fighting part is the hardest part. And you have to decide that you want to fight. And that's what I mean by that is, on defense, you have to decide that you want to make every tackle. You have to decide that you want to do the dirty work, right? Like, you want to get muddy. You want to live in that dirt. You want to you want to, if you got a wrong arm, you're going to wrong arm. And that's something that, and listen, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to alienate listeners, but basically a wrong arm is when you spill wide so that somebody else can make a tackle. And it's ugly work, but you got to decide you want to do that ugly work. That's what Oklahoma for me, that's what stood out for me about Oklahoma in that game against Kansas is I know they wore their unity jerseys and the whole deal, but they did look like a team that decided we're going to do the ugly work today. And Oregon, to take it back to the original point, Oregon wants to do the ugly work. It looks like they want to do the ugly work after that first game. And it looks like for Bo Nix, having people around him that want to do that ugly work with him makes him feel more comfortable, makes him feel more confident. And he doesn't feel like he has to be a hero. He feels like he can be a quarterback.
And Yogi, to your point early, the question about the tough games last week, right? Those tough losses, it's obvious that Oregon's coaching staff took that and the players took it and moved on. Yeah. And like, you know what? We just played a really good football team, a top tier program. Yep. And we need to get, for lack of a better term, we got to get our shit together right now.
Yes.
Because and they have done a hell of a job there because those guys have responded and the players are playing well and the coaches have taken that. So, after things like that, you can go one way or the other and be like, oh, woe was me, because everybody, except for you, Yogi, but everybody was like, Oregon is done, right? They stink.
Hey, you see the helmet. You see the helmet.
Good. I snuck it in,
good.
Right?
That's good. But I'll tell you what. All right, so this is my job, right? I know my role here, and around the country, around the Pac-12.
Right.
In the first game of the season, 29 missed tackles.
Yep.
376 yards after contact allowed. Now I know
that's my point,
but they're not that good, and I don't think they're 49-3 better than Oregon. They played as bad as they could. They had 4 possessions in the first half. Move the ball on all of them. 2 ended in picks. So to your point, like, it was the worst recipe of all time. And if you just tuned in, you're like, they're terrible. The Pac is over. Oregon's
get them out of here.
But I was there the next week and gaining context around Dan Lanning's team of first time on the road, first game of the year, first time doing warm-ups together in front of a crazy crowd. First time having to deal with real adversity.
Home crowd.
A crazy crowd.
A bonkers out of this world crowd coming off the natty, the whole thing. Like,
right.
And every AD wants to do 2 things: never schedule Air Force, and the new advice: never schedule the defending champ in a home game across the country. Right? Like,
the problem is you don't know if they're going to be the defending champ 5 years from now.
Yeah, it's impossible to predict. But I can't imagine a Pac-12 team ever going further than Vegas for a non-conference game for the rest of the Pac-12's life, or Pac-10, or wherever we end up becoming. But to that point, I look at Oregon, and I'd be curious if you can tell me, because you guys watch the rest of the country with more detail than I do. I haven't seen a better offensive line in this league since Stanford back in the day when they were rolling people. I don't know who you think is the best O-line in the country, but I think that Oregon has 3 dudes that dipped their toe in the NFL last year, 2 tackles in the center, and all came back, and they're absolute road graders. Like, and a quarterback can run with his legs. Like, I just love this part of their team. Wonder if you see it that same way as you look around the country.
I think their offensive line is very good. I will say this. I think that and here's the thing. Because Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, they've given up 1 sack this year. Is that right?
Yeah, and they would argue it because it was like 6 inches from the line of scrimmage. You tried to get back to it. Yeah.
I think Ohio State, Ole Miss, and I'm gonna throw Tennessee in there, but Tennessee is also living in this different world with that speed and space, where they're taking your chance to get sacks away from you. It's not the offensive line play, but I do think that Ole Miss is definitely. I don't think they have maybe the caliber of offense of NFL guys, but I do think that Ole Miss is in that same world.
I'll go back to what I said, right? I agree with the Yogi. Those 3 guys, and I would say even they've got 4 guys right now that are NFL players, offensive line, right? But I go back to my original statement. The way that first game went, right? Public perception was they got their ass kicked, right?
Yes.
Right up front. Whether that happened or not, that was the public perception with Georgia. And it looks to me the way they play right now, they have taken that personally, and they're putting on tape what they want on tape in the Pac-12 or against other opponents. And I mean they're like you said, I agree with you. They're about as good up front as anybody in the country, but I think a lot of it comes back to that first week, right?
Yeah.
What happened? Who's responsible? And why did this happen? But certainly they put that behind them. But I do think they've taken a lot of pride in, hey, look, we are not the guys that played first week. We are this football team, quarterback, O-line, the defense. They're playing with an edge, and they're playing really physical football, which is going to give them a hell of I mean, they got that. They have as good a chance to win the league as anybody right now. And creep in, just keep creeping up a little bit. Just keep creeping, and you never know, right?